Hi Shreya, this is Sakshi from BuzzInContent.com. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you.
And let's quickly just introduce you to our viewers as well. So Shreya Kapoor, जो कि एक finance content creator है, she has gained significant popularity on social media for her captivating content on financial advice. इनका content creation का एक unique approach है जो personally मुझे भी बहुत अच्छा लगता है. That the way she simplifies complex finance topics by portraying various characters जो कि बहुत ही fun to watch होते हैं. So, Shreya, just to begin with, अपनी जर्नी के बारे में बताइए. How did you venture into this world of finance content creation? क्या वो चीज थी जो वायरल होती चली गई स्टार्टिंग में?
Right. So Sakshi, honestly, मैंने कभी भी नहीं सोचा था that content creation is something that I would ever do. Because I was very camera conscious as a person, and I still am to a large extent.
Doesn't
So
look like when I see your content.
that's what I get a lot. But honestly, I was always someone who was behind the camera. So even in college, like I was part of the photography club. So I was always more comfortable just being like behind the camera rather than in front of it. And after college, even though my undergrad was in finance, I
Okay.
started working with a management consulting firm. So it was a campus placement, and I worked there for almost 2 years. But I quit that job realizing कि ठीक है मुझे ये नहीं करना है शायद like forever. And doing an MBA at that point in time just didn't make sense to me. So I wanted to do something of my own. So that's when I quit my job in February of 2020 and I started like doing my own strategy and freelancing work. And it so happened that because my background was in finance, a lot of startups, which were fintech startups, started approaching me for strategy work. And that's when one of the startups said that, hey, do you want to be a part of like our YouTube channel and do you want to be the face of it? To which I said no, like because I was extremely camera conscious. I was like, okay, I'll help you out with the scripts and the strategy of social media, but not be the face of it. But when I gave it another thought, it was like, "Ki, acha, you have to come out of your comfort zone at some time, right?" So I think 3-4 months after that interaction, I started my own page only with the intention that, okay, I will do like something for just say pastime ke liye, like some hobby to pick up. Because if you remember at the time, COVID second wave was like at its peak, like around March, April of 2021. That's when I actually started out my page because I was just bored out of my mind, like sitting at home. And there was so much happening around us. So just to keep my mind off things, I started out this page. And it so happened that my third, fourth videos just sort of went viral. It was a video of like me showing my dad my crypto portfolio, and my dad's a chartered accountant, so like that's an ad that adds another layer of like finance there. And his reaction was so funny that that video sort of went viral, and it got like 6-7 million views in like a span of a day or two. And of course, I was not anticipating that because at the time I had like 1,000 followers or something, right? So when that happened, it made me realize that okay, the only way to grow on Instagram is to create more video content. So I shifted my focus more towards reels, and then like the page just sort of like boomed, honestly. And I got my first paid partnership within 2 months of like doing this. That's when it hit me that I can actually monetize what I do also. Before that, I had no idea, very honestly. So yeah, that's basically how it started.
So, आपको कितने साल हो गए हैं basically content creation में?
So I started in April of 2021. I actually started on the 1st of April because it was the new financial year. So I was like, okay, this is the right time to start. So it's been over 2 years now. So it's crazy, honestly.
All right. So, coming to paid partnerships and brand deals, as a financial content creator, आपको कुछ challenges भी face करने पड़ते होंगे because I have been talking to a lot of creators from varied categories, from across varied categories. So they personally have been telling me कि बहुत challenges लगते हैं. So, as a content creator in your genre, like what challenges do you face while working with the brands and doing paid partnerships?
So I think finance and probably healthcare are specifically spaces where you have to go above and beyond to understand what the product is and if it's the right fit for your audience, because their money or their health is directly on the line, right?
Right.
Say for example, if it's a product like clothing product, right? तो अगर आप कर भी रहे हो उनके साथ पार्टनरशिप, तो उसका आपकी ऑडियंस पे उतना ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट नहीं होगा जितना फॉर एग्जांपल अगर वो एक इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लेटफॉर्म है. अगर किसी के पैसे अटक जाते हैं, then that is a bigger problem rather than if they buy like the wrong top, and that's completely fine, right? So the significance of understanding who you're partnering with is just that much higher when it comes to either finance or healthcare, for example.
Hmm.
तो इस वजह से it's a space where it gets very tricky because you have to use the product yourself to understand, okay,
Right.
क्या सेफ्टी है, क्या डेटा सेफ रहेगा ऑडियंस का, क्या पैसे सेफ रहेंगे, किससे बैग्ड है ये प्रोडक्ट, क्या ये प्रोडक्ट एक राइट फिट है फॉर द ऑडियंस दैट यू आर केटरिंग टू, इज इट सेफ टू यूज,
Hmm.
and especially with like newer finance products coming up every day, right? For
Right.
example, we saw this crypto boom and NFT boom that came about in 2021. But
Right.
as a finance creator, you had to take that stand ki, okay, like, is this product worth endorsing? Or is this platform worth endorsing? Or is this NFT worth endorsing?
Right.
So, because people's money is directly getting linked, right? So, I think doing those basic checks and then going above and beyond, talking to, for example, the team, understanding their vision, understanding, okay, where are they coming from, what problem is this product solving at the end of the day, how are they better than the competitors that are already existing in the market. So asking yourself all of these questions and probably asking the hard questions from the team, from the
Okay.
product team, is very, very important, and that's something that I do almost for all the brands that I partner with.
Okay. So like, what kind of brands approach you for like paid partnerships? जैसे for my own knowledge, जैसे lifestyle content creators के लिए, there are a lot of personal care brands
Yeah.
and other categories of brands that approach. तो आपको किस तरह के brands approach करते हैं?
So mostly it's fintech companies only, like ranging from, say, for example, credit card companies to real estate companies to investment platforms. So anything and everything that comes about in fintech space,
हाँ.
we get approached by, and even traditional businesses like a lot of big banks that exist in India approach us. Payment platforms that have been in existence like forever. For
Hmm.
example, all of a lot of finance influencers even work with UPI directly. So like a lot of brands that have anything to do with money at the end of the day, they approach us. In fact, companies that have nothing to do with money also sometimes approach us. But then it's a call that we have to take that, okay, if it's not like suited for the audience, then we say no to the brand. So yeah.
Okay. So, how do you navigate and comply with the ever-changing rules and regulations surrounding influencer marketing, particularly in finance industry?
Right. So very honestly, ever since I personally started my my influencer journey, something that I've always like reiterated when I do a paid partnership is that number one, I'll be using that product myself for like a month or so before I sort of endorse it.
Right.
And number two, always say that this is not investment advice. This is just a recommendation. Something
Right.
that I came across and I found it to be a nice product, and you can give it a shot, but also do your own research, right? Because when it comes to personal finance, there is no one size fits all. For example, an investment product could be very good for me considering I'm in my 20s, but for someone who's in their 40s, that product might just not work out. So
Right.
doing your own research and figuring out, okay, what is the right fit for me also is as important as, just looking at content and then blindly following it. So,
Right.
so something that I kind of reiterate a lot in all of my brand partnerships is that this is just me providing a recommendation. This is not at all investment advice. You don't have to put your money there. Just look at the product, read up about it, do your research, and if it feels like the right fit, then go ahead and invest your money there. Yeah.
Right. So, also talking about the rules and regulations, abhi recently हमारी finance minister ने she like cautioned people against financial influences and emphasized the need for caution when seeking their advice. So,
Absolutely.
how do you think this statement could impact the perception of financial influences among investors? Because personally, I did a story where I was interacting with a lot of influencers,
Right.
okay, and they gave a very mixed review. So, how do you think this statement can affect the creator economy as a whole?
So I personally think this is a very it's a positive step and it's in the right direction, very honestly, because if you come to think about it, influencer market as a space is largely unregulated, right?
Mhm.
So the more regulations that come about in the place, the better it becomes for everybody. So right now, people, if say for example, there are three people doing the wrong thing and three people doing the right thing,
Right.
when you bring about regulations, the three people who are doing the wrong things kind of have to go away. They have no other option, which
Right.
means that the space overall becomes safer for the three people who are doing the right thing.
Right.
So I think regulations are actually really important because there are people that kind of just misuse the power that they're in and misuse the influence. So I think regulation makes the space safer for not just the audience, but also the influencers who are trying to do the right thing. Because right now, even if we are doing the right thing, we have to justify ourselves again and again and say that, okay, no, we're like complying by the regulations and everything. And we're trying to do our best, like we're trying to give you the right advice and so on and so forth. But when the regulations come about, we'll have that structure to go about. And I think that will make this space that much safer for everyone to operate in. So yeah, I'm in 100% favor of like regulation of the space.
All right. So, just like I talked about the story that I was doing after that statement, मुझे ऐसा लगता है और मेरे को ऐसे रिव्यूज भी मिले. Obviously, आप लोग की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है to be transparent और एक सही एडवाइस देना. So,
Right.
but I also feel that while people are listening to you, the investors and people like me who do not have much knowledge about financial advices, I don't really go to anybody and I would just seek advice. So I'll just approach, like maybe I'll just the thing is, maybe I'll just look after that the kind of content that you have been putting. And तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के इन्वेस्टर और मेरी तरफ भी है कि मैं खुद भी चेकआउट करूं कि ये कैसा इंफॉर्मेशन यू आर पासिंग आउट. आई कांट रियली ब्लेम यू गाइज. Okay, I need to do my homework as well. So, according to you, what should the investors do, or people like me and others who do not have that much knowledge? What should they do on their part?
I think that's a very good question. I think a few things that people can do, like as viewers of the content. Number one, check the history and the qualifications of the person that you're following, right? So, for example, if you're taking investment advice, check if that person is SEBI registered, right? Check if they have the expertise to be providing investment advice, number one. Number two, check the history, like how far along have they been doing it. अगर उन्होंने 1-2 month पहले ही content बनाना start किया, तो maybe that's not like the right influence for you to follow right away. Give them some time to prove themselves. And there are people who've been doing it for a year, over a year, like 2, 3, 5 years maybe. Maybe go for influencers that have been in the market for a longer period of time, because they have faced the backlash already. They've already overcome all the problems and all the challenges and have proven themselves to a certain extent to the audience. So now probably following them is a safer bet than, say, for example, somebody who's new in the market. That's number two. Number three, question the people you're following as much as possible. So for example, if you feel like they are doing a paid partnership but not mentioning that it's a paid partnership, call them out in the comments. It's definitely your responsibility to keep the influencer accountable also. If you feel like they're not complying by the regulations, call them out in the comments. Are they answering those comments? And people, if your influencers are not answering you back in the comments, not addressing your questions, then maybe that's not the right influencer to follow, right? So, and of course, at the end of the day, doing your own research is very, very important. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, personal finance is like very personal, right? So what might be the right fit for Sakshi might not be the right fit for Shreya. So it's very important to understand, okay, which advice might be rightly suited for me and what might not be. So yeah, these few pointers, if you keep in mind, I think you'll be pretty safe.
Right. And if I talk about you particularly, कभी कुछ ऐसा हुआ है कि audience में से they have reached out to you, Shreya, मेरे को ये advice this did not work out for me. So how have you rectified that? और अगर ये किसी और financial influencer के साथ होता है, तो how do you think they should rectify that thing?
So number one, Sakshi, I personally don't give out investment advice at all because I'm not SEBI registered, right? So, and I think that's what the finance minister also rightly mentioned, that more often than not, finance influencers are giving out investment advice कि अच्छा ये वाला stock खरीद लो या ये वाला fund खरीद लो, and without being SEBI registered. So because I am not SEBI registered and I don't think a lot of financial influencers in this space are, they are not in a position to give out investment advice, and they shouldn't. So if they're telling you कि अच्छा ये वाला stock खरीद लो या ये वाला fund खरीद लो, they are just like probably not to be believed. So what I do personally, if at all I have to talk about an investment idea, I say that, okay, this is what I did. This was my thinking behind it. And that's it. It's not a recommendation for you to buy. I'm just trying to understand that, okay, if this stock, so for example, I covered a stock long back. It was CDSL, which gave me like 10x returns, and it did. Like over a span of a year when the lockdown happened and everyone was opening their demat account. So
Right.
CDSL performed really well. So it personally gave me 10x return. So I made a video out of it. But never once did I mention that, okay, this is a recommendation or you should buy it at this price point or anything like that. It was just an understanding that, hey, I bought it, it became 10x. I've actually exited from the market now. And now I'm sharing this example with you because this was my thinking when I bought it. So when you find a similar stock, maybe you can venture into that opportunity. But it was not like a stock market advice, or it was not an ask for people to go ahead and buy that stock. So I think making that distinction very clear is very important, that whether it's a recommendation or whether it's just you're sharing your own sort of like experience or what you experienced in the market. So making that distinction is very clear. Yeah.
Okay. So as I was talking about it, like it is unfortunate that some individuals have in the past lost money by, following wrong advice from certain finance influencers. So how do you ensure transparency and maintain the trust of your audience as a finance creator?
Right. So the first thing I do, as I mentioned earlier, is just mention very clearly when it's a paid partnership, right? So
Mhm.
for example, if I'm working with a brand and they want me to promote their platform, obviously, just make sure that you write it in plain and simple language that it's a paid partnership, and it's, of course, you've tried and tested your the product out and you've done your due diligence, but at the end of the day it is still a paid partnership. So just so the audience knows that they have to watch the video with a little bit more caution than say other videos that you put out. So that's step number one. Step number two is writing in the caption somewhere that, okay, this is not a recommendation but rather just like something that I came across, I like the platform, so I'm telling you about it. But it's not a call for you to go ahead and just blindly follow what I've mentioned in the video. And step number three is be open to criticism in the comments, right? So a lot of people, if you endorse a product, people who have used the product before might have things to say about it, right? Like they might come across and say that, okay, I used this platform
Right.
and this is something that didn't work out for me. So then you can become the key between the audience and the product and take all of that negative feedback and give it to the product team and ask them to improve their product. So that's something that I do multiple times. That if I get negative feedback about a product that I'm endorsing, I go back to the product team, I have a call with them, and I tell them, look, these are the pain points that the audience is coming across, and maybe you can work on it. And this has actually helped a lot of people. So to give you an example, I was working with a bank, a very established bank, and promoting a product, like a private limited bank in India, one of the biggest ones. And one of the products I was like talking about loan in the loan space, and
Mhm.
people came about and said that, okay, these were the problems that they were facing while taking out a loan, or when making prepayments and stuff like that. And then I had a call with their team, and a lot of the issues got resolved. Like a lot of people who left their comments, their issues got resolved. So I think that was a big win for a lot of people, because while it was a paid partnership, actual pain points got resolved for a lot of people in the audience. So I think that's the role that an influencer can take.
Yes. So, like, do you believe that financial influences should be regulated? If so, how do you think this could impact your work? If no, then what are your reasons for that?
So when we talk about personal finance, I think there is so much that comes under it, right? You have budgeting, you have saving, you have taxation, you have insurance, and then you have investing, and so on and so forth. I think
Mhm.
when it comes to investing, yes, regulation is required, because uh, a lot of people are in the space to make quick money. So
Mhm.
sometimes what ends up happening is that they take any advice that comes their way and then just they sort of act on it. But I think something that people can do,
Mhm.
so when regulation comes about in the investment space, I think that would really help a lot of people, because uh, that means that only SEBI registered people or people who are actually qualified to give out investment advice are giving out investment advice. But when it comes to other like areas of personal finance, I think we can even do without regulation. Just hear me out here. Like, say, for example, when we talk about personal like other like budgeting, saving, or insurance or taxation, so on and so forth. I think because this is something that you can learn on your own also, and then you can talk about it. And if you have practical experience in that area, it's only better.
Mhm.
Um, it's not necessary that it's largely regulated, or like there's a qualification that's required for you to talk about it also, because a lot of the times you learn about these things because of the mistakes that you make.
Right.
And yeah, and people follow finance influencers largely not because they're qualified or anything like that, but also because they have the ability to simplify things in a very, very like easy language for people to digest. So I think regulation in the investment advice space 100% is required. But when it comes to budgeting, saving, and other like areas of personal finance, I think very strict regulations can also like are not required that much, but like some regulations 100%, like how to operate, what to talk about, what not to talk about, these regulations would only help the space grow.
Okay. So lastly, I would like to ask you कि आपके ओपिनियन में आपको क्या लगता है कि गवर्नमेंट को क्या स्टेप्स लेने चाहिए to work with the financial influencers to provide credible information to the investors and to general public as well?
So as I mentioned earlier, like we are working with a lot of government organizations. Like we've worked with and government initiatives. Like we worked with UPI directly, and we've worked with a lot of government sector banks also. So which means that the government needs finance influencers as much as they need them to come up with regulations.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, they also have the power to give about the right information. So when we worked with UPI, we were talking about how not to fall for UPI scams, right?
Right.
And that's something that they wanted us to sort of put the message around. So I think when finance influencers and government work hand in hand, like amazing things can happen, like what happened with the UPI campaign. So I think what is required out of both the parties is the government, yes, puts about the right regulations in space and also kind of gives us guidelines as to what to operate in, because sometimes it's very sort of like hazy. The lines are very hazy. So for example, the finance minister said that yeah, they have no plans of coming up with regulations for influencers, but also like most of them are there to scam you. But which might just not be the case, very honestly. Yes, a few people are doing that deed, but calling out all influencers like that, I don't think is very fair. What they can do alternatively is give out regulations for finance influencers. Currently, from what I understand, there are no regulations. The only regulation is for SEBI registered individuals. For finance influencers as a whole, there are no regulations. Whatever we're doing it like just to comply with the standards that we've put up for ourselves, like telling that it's a paid partnership or answering questions for all the brands and so on and so forth. Like everything that we're doing, we're not complied by law to do it. Like we're doing it because we feel like it's the right thing to do. So I think what the government can do instead is come up with regulations and then probably hold us accountable if we're unable to like sort of fulfill those guidelines. And apart from that, finance influencers, what they can do instead is like do their best in terms of like being as transparent as possible with the audience. Like say for example, mentioning whether it's a paid partnership, having open communication with the audience, so on and so forth. And I think if that happens, this space has so much potential because there's so much information available on the internet that a finance influencer can really help simplify for the audience. And when the government sort of realizes that, I think we can also work a lot more closely to kind of bring out the right information to the audience.
Right. I absolutely agree with you. And thank you so much, Shreya, for joining us today and for sharing your valuable insights. Personally, मैंने बहुत कुछ सीखा है आज आपसे. I hope our viewers also learn a lot of things out of this episode. Thanks a lot, Shreya. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me.